Hey everyone, my name is Alex and welcome to a video on the history of the Byzantine Empire for Civilization 6. Now what I try and do in these historical looks is I try and give some reasons as to why the bonuses of a civilization are what they are. So for this one we're looking at Byzantium, we're looking at Basil II, we're looking at the unique units and the Hippodrome and all that stuff. And we're going to try and take a quick look at it and figure out where exactly it comes from in history. So hopefully you will enjoy it, and we will start by a very brief overview of Byzantium. The history of Byzantium really is a history of ups and downs. This civilization had so many triumphs and yet so many disasters, it makes it one of the most fascinating ones to look at historically. The civilization, which essentially began as the Eastern Roman Empire and for the large part considered themselves Roman, rather than the term Byzantine that we usually give them today, lasted up until the 15th century, outlasting the traditional Roman Empire, or the Western Roman Empire, for a whole 1,000 years, which is a very long time. What makes this civilization so intriguing beyond its triumphs and tribulations, some of which we will actually discuss today, was its Greek influence, in addition to the way it offered a gateway between the classical Greco-Roman world with its history, its architecture and inspirations, and the medieval period when the empire actually existed. The Byzantine Empire stood apart from its European counterparts such as England and France in so many ways, and it's really fascinating to, first of all, just look at and admire the architecture, and secondly, to study. So although I could talk about Byzantine history all afternoon, this video is not that. This one's talking about them in Civ 6, so we should probably move on and discuss their leader Basil II. So Basil II was senior emperor of Byzantium for almost 50 years between 976 and 1025, and essentially he held power for 40 years beyond the year 985. Interestingly, he and his brother had actually been made co-rulers on their father's death in 963, but Basil just wasn't old enough to take full control at that point, meaning other influential Byzantine figures stepped in to exercise power for themselves. Once Basil had grown up and sort of seized power for himself, amongst the highlights of his reign included his administrative achievements in a time of almost constant war, his success in navigating civil war, and most importantly for Byzantium in Civilization 6, his military victories. Now Basil achieved many great victories for Byzantium against the likes of the Kingdom of Georgia and the Fatimid Caliphate to the east, but it was against the Bulgarians to the west where he gained his reputation as a Bulgar slayer. Basil spent years warring with the Bulgarians, commanding his armies himself, and following a major victory at the end of the war, he actually gouged out both eyes in 99 out of 100 Bulgarian soldiers he'd captured, leaving the 100th man with one single eye to guide his prisoners home. It's therefore no surprise that really Basil is properly unpopular in Bulgaria, but this did nevertheless make his enemies fear him, and from a Civ 6 point of view, it's quite clear to see why Basil has a big focus on domination and the military conflicts which come with that. So in the game, Basil gets the bonus that heavy and light cavalry units do full damage against cities following the same religion as Byzantium. Now there's a couple of places this bonus seems to take inspiration from. Firstly, Byzantium was an incredibly militaristic civilization, often waging massive military campaigns and controlling massive amounts of territory, so this is a civilization which in real life had a big focus on military campaigns. Secondly, religion in the form of Christianity was fundamental in Byzantium's history ever since Constantine adopted it. Now this focus for Byzantium of religion in real life sort of gives a bit of reasoning as to why Byzantium has such a big focus on religion throughout the game. But there's one other thing I really want to remember here, and that's Basil II married his sister to the king of the Kievan Rus, which not just forged an alliance between the two nations, but also converted the Kievan Rus to Christianity, and eventually saw them adopt Eastern Orthodoxy. Now, this is an example of how Byzantium spreaded its influence through religion, something which is evident in the game. So, in Civ 6, the way to kind of really spread your influence is no doubt to conquer cities militarily. However, with its bonuses and focuses on religion and domination, Byzantium really embraces that bit of its history where things like this happened, where Basil used his religion to sort of spread his influence and not to sort of specifically conquer another civilization or another country, but to really have them by his side and within his ranks sort of thing. So another part of Basil's bonus is that he also gets the Tagma unit. Now this means that land units within one tile of the Tagma receive +4 combat strength or religious strength, which is the bonus of this unit. So in real life, the Tagma at first were Byzantine descendants of the Roman Imperial Guard. However, as their numbers dwindled and their effectiveness as a fighting force just sort of collapsed, Emperor Constantine reorganized them into a mobile, well-trained fighting force loyal to the Emperor. Now units within the Tagma gradually increased after this, so it not just encompassed units around the Emperor and in Constantinople, but the Tagma sort of system of doing things expanded to all across the empire. And as the centuries progressed and Byzantium became more reliant on its cavalry forces, the Tagma became dominated by such units, and hence why the Tagma is a cavalry force in Civ 6. So moving on, Byzantium's ability is Taxis. Now this means that units receive +3 combat strength or religious strength for each holy city converted to Byzantium, and it also gives +1 great profit point from cities with a holy site district. Now I had a look at what Taxis actually meant, and it seems like it was kind of a term, or a similar term was used to refer to various commanders in the Byzantine military. And I think the bonus itself comes from that focus of religion and domination, which I talked about a little bit earlier with this civilization. So, both of those things are very important to Byzantium in Civ 6. And in real life, like, Byzantium, as I mentioned, had a big focus on faith. And one of the things it did was it defended the faith from sort of Islamic forces in the east. And obviously Constantinople was a major city, a major Christian city at this time. So I think it comes from things like that, and that real combination, once again, of domination and religion, which we saw both in real life and in the game. So Byzantium's unique unit in Civilization 6 is the Drumon. Now this has additional combat strength and additional range compared to the Quadrime, which it replaces. Now Drumons were pivotal in defending the Byzantine mainland, which had a serious amount of coastline and harbours, and of course defending other things such as Byzantine trade routes. Like, if Byzantium didn't have an effective navy that could defend from its rivals, that could crush its trade routes and things like that, Byzantium probably would have collapsed. So these sort of units were pivotal in the success of the empire. So these naval units were essentially triremes in real life, but they were used thousands of years after the heyday of the trireme, but were still incredibly effective because of their increased range attacks, including Greek fire, which, as I am delighted about, is still used in Civilization 6. So when we think about the Drumon in Civ 6, the reason it's a classical era naval replacement is because it's basically a trireme, and the reason it's got additional strength is because it's basically a trireme on steroids. And finally, the reason it's got additional range is because a big part of what made these units last so long and be so effective for Byzantium a long time after they were used by anybody else is because they added more ranged aspects to it, such as the Greek fire, which looks incredibly cool in Civilization 6. So the last thing to talk about is the Hippodrome, which is Byzantium's unique district in Civ 6, and its bonuses are twofold. So firstly, the district is cheaper to build and crucially offers additional amenities. And secondly, when the Hippodrome or buildings within the Hippodrome are constructed, Byzantium receives a heavy cavalry unit for free that does not require resources when created or to maintain. So from the Greek for horseway, hippodromes were venues for chariot racing, which had been an incredibly bloody but popular sport for the Romans before them, and the Byzantines loved chariot racing as well. It also had a ton of influence in Byzantine life, so no surprise when you consider how important it was that it gives the Byzantium additional amenities in the game. An event which emphasises the size and influence of the hippodromes, and also why in Civ 6 they can be such a big factor in controlling the happiness and mood in your civilization, is the Nika riots. Now in chariot racing there was a blue and a green team. These teams had large arguments and in some cases came to blows over politics and religion. But in the reign of Justinian, they actually united against the emperor and completely rioted in Constantinople. So you can see, as I just mentioned, how important these were to controlling the mood of the population. Perhaps such a militaristic event as well, in connection with Byzantium's domination focus and the fact that horses obviously go hand in hand with the Hippodrome and the chariot racing, perhaps that is the reason for the militaristic side of this bonus. Okay, so that is our historical look at Byzantium in Civ 6. I'll be doing Gaul next, so if you want to see that, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Another thing I'd say is, let me know what you think to Byzantium in Civ 6, especially any historical facts you may have come across and think I should have added into this video. Do let me know in the comments. I have to say it's difficult to get everything in because I'm trying to keep these videos as short as possible but give as much information as possible. So hopefully, even if I missed a couple of things, which please go ahead and mention in the comments, hopefully you enjoyed it and hopefully you learned something. Thank you so much for watching this video today. If you want to see another one of our Civilization 6 videos, then make sure you check out the Civ video in the box below. Also, to see lots more content, including the Gaul historical look, which I've got coming up soon, make sure you hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. Feel free to share it with your friends as well. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex, and I will see you in another video soon.